The air in my house felt thick, heavy with the cloying sweetness of frosting and the oppressive cheerfulness of pastel balloons. Pink and blue bobbed against the ceiling like mocking, innocent eyes. Each tiny onesie clipped to the decorative line across the fireplace felt like a tiny accusation. Outside, the sun shone brilliantly. Inside, a storm was gathering and I was standing directly in its path. This was it. Minutes before the first guests would arrive for my sister Chloe's baby shower. A picture-perfect event I'd orchestrated down to the last ribbon, while my own life was apparently fraying at the seams. My phone vibrated on the granite countertop, a harsh sound against the soft background music. Not a guest running late. An unknown number. 6 words, stark and brutal in all caps. Check your husband's laptop. Right now. My breath caught, sharp and painful in my chest. Check Mark's laptop? What? A wave of dizziness washed over me. It felt wrong, invasive, a violation of the trust one thought was the bedrock of our marriage. But the stark command on the screen pulsed with an undeniable, terrifying urgency. My heart suddenly felt too big for my chest, slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. I glanced towards the hallway where Mark's briefcase sat innocently by the door. He just dashed out to pick up the custom cake, a quick errand before playing the doting uncle-to-be. A voice screamed in my head, "Don't do it. It's nothing. A prank. You're being paranoid." But another, colder feeling was spreading through me, a chilling certainty that this message arriving right now was no accident. This was a detonator. With trembling legs I crossed the room. The leather of the briefcase felt slick beneath my suddenly sweating palm. Unzipping it sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet house. I pulled out the laptop, cool metal surprisingly heavy like it was weighted with secrets. Powering it on felt final. Like stepping off a cliff edge in the dark. The familiar login screen appeared. My fingers, clumsy with dread, typed in the password. Our anniversary date, the irony like acid in my throat. And I navigated to the folder that seemed to whisper my name. I clicked. And the world as I knew it didn't just crack. It exploded. Vaporized. Leaving nothing behind but smoke, ashes, and the horrifying, gaping void where my life used to be. Before that message, life felt painted in warm, reliable colors. Predictable, yes, but in a way that felt like building something lasting. I'm Sarah, 30 years old at the time, working as a graphic designer, finally feeling like I had my feet under me. My husband, Mark, a driven financial analyst, was my partner in everything. Or so I thought. We'd been married 5 years, poured our savings and weekends into renovating a cozy suburban house, talked about kids, one day soon. He was handsome, successful, and seemingly adored me. Our life felt like a blueprint for happiness. Sunday brunches, Friday night movies, quiet evenings planning our future. Thought. Safe. A fortress built on mutual trust. Mark was the kind of husband who left notes in my lunch bag, who knew exactly how I took my coffee, who bragged about my design work to his colleagues. He worked hard, long hours sometimes, but his ambition was part of what I loved. He was building a future for us. That's what I told myself. That's what I desperately believed. Then there was Chloe, my sister. 5 years younger, with a personality that sparkled for everyone else but often left me feeling overshadowed. Growing up, love was definitely there, but it swam in a complicated current of her needing to measure up, to borrow my clothes, my friends, my spotlight. She'd perfected a kind of wide-eyed charm that made people forgive her anything. Our parents, especially, were susceptible, often waving away her manipulations as just Chloe being Chloe. I learned to navigate it, to keep a certain distance while still playing the supportive older sister. When she announced her pregnancy 6 months prior, the father vaguely described as a short-lived fling, and quickly out of the picture my protective instincts kicked in. She seemed vulnerable, alone. I jumped into planning the perfect baby shower. It felt like my duty, my chance to finally bridge some of the unspoken distance between us. I wanted her to feel cherished. Mark was wonderfully supportive, offering to help constantly. He helped assemble the crib, drove Chloe to appointments when she felt unwell, always asked after her with such concern. He's being such a good brother-in-law, I'd thought, touched by his kindness. I remember one afternoon months before the pregnancy announcement even, finding him helping her fix her broken laptop, heads bent close together, laughing. I'd felt a fleeting, irrational pang of something. Annoyance. Exclusion. I brushed it off instantly. He was just being nice to my sister. Looking back, nice seems like such a small, pathetic word for the depths of his deception. Our fortress wasn't safe. It was built on quicksand. The real disruption wasn't the message itself, but the horrifying clarity it brought to the preceding weeks. That quiet buzz from my phone, the stark words. They were a lens, suddenly bringing blurry, nagging inconsistencies into sharp focus. My first reaction was pure, visceral denial. Oh, not Mark. Not Chloe. It had to be a cruel joke. A wrong number targeting the wrong person on the worst possible day. I almost threw the phone across the room. I almost convinced myself to ignore it, to lock the memory away and focus on the cucumber sandwiches and gift bags. Ignorance suddenly seemed like the most precious commodity in the world. But the message wouldn't let go. It snagged on tiny, previously dismissed observations. Mark had been different lately. More guarded with his phone, tilting the screen away, ending calls abruptly if I walked into the room. He'd installed new passwords on his laptop and social media, citing work security policies with an easy shrug that now felt rehearsed. He was home late more often, smelling faintly of unfamiliar perfume or cigarettes he didn't smoke, blaming brutal deadlines at the office. The excuses were plausible, always plausible. But his eyes, they didn't quite meet mine. There was a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. And Chloe, viewed through this new, terrifying lens, her recent behavior took on a sinister hue. Her sudden, intense reliance on Mark. Constant texts, late-night calls about pregnancy woes she never shared with me. Her way of touching his arm, letting her hand linger. The inside jokes they shared, laughing intimately while I stood awkwardly outside their bubble. When I gently suggested she lean on me or our parents more, she'd produced crocodile tears, claiming Mark was just so much more understanding, and making me feel petty and jealous. He'd back her up, acting slightly wounded. "Honey, I'm just trying to help your sister. Don't you trust me?" Their combined performance had been flawless, expertly designed to make me question my own sanity. Standing there, moments before the shower, the anonymous message burning a hole in my reality, these fragments clicked together with horrifying speed. The easy camaraderie I'd mistaken for familial support suddenly looked like practiced intimacy. His kindness looked like opportunity. Her vulnerability looked like manipulation. The dread wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a physical weight pressing down on me, stealing my breath. I had to know. The not knowing was suddenly more terrifying than the worst possible truth. My hand, slick with sweat, reached for the laptop again. What secrets was this cold metal box holding? And could I survive finding out? The days following that near discovery were agonizing. I hadn't looked, not really. I'd powered on the laptop that day before the shower, hesitated, then slammed it shut in a panic as the doorbell rang. But the intent had been there. The seed of poisonous suspicion was firmly planted, and now I saw weeds everywhere. I became an unwilling detective in my own life, scrutinizing every word, every glance, every interaction between Mark and Chloe. His late nights continued, often ending with him slipping into bed hours after I pretended to be asleep, smelling faintly of the outdoors and hurried showers. I started checking our phone records online. Dozens of calls and texts between him and Chloe, far exceeding normal brother-in-law duties, often clustered late at night or during his supposed work emergencies. Once sorting laundry, I found a small, expensive-looking gift box tucked away in the back of his closet, the kind jewelry comes in. It wasn't my birthday or our anniversary. When I casually asked if he'd bought something special recently, he paled slightly, then mumbled it was a corporate gift for a client he'd forgotten about. He quickly changed the subject. The box disappeared the next day. The atmosphere in our house grew thick with unspoken tension. We moved around each other like wary ghosts. The easy affection was gone, replaced by either forced cheerfulness from him or a brittle silence from me. He started suggesting I was overly stressed, imagining things because of the pressure of the shower and Chloe's condition. He'd try to hug me and I'd flinch internally, forcing myself not to pull away, the scent of his cologne suddenly making me feel nauseous. Chloe, meanwhile, escalated her performance of the needy, grateful sister-in-law, while simultaneously planting subtle barbs. "Oh, Sarah, you're so lucky Mark is patient enough to deal with your work stress," she'd say sweetly. Or, "Mark was telling me how tired you've been lately, maybe you need a break?" It was psychological warfare disguised as concern. She'd accidentally forward me emails between her and Mark discussing baby things, seemingly innocent planning, but always highlighting how involved Mark was, how much he cared. One afternoon I overheard them whispering in the kitchen. I only caught a fragment. Something about, "After the baby comes, it'll be easier." They stopped abruptly, turning with startled, slightly too innocent smiles when they saw me. "Just finalizing the guest list seating," Chloe chirped, fiddling with a napkin. The constant vigilance was exhausting. The self-doubt gnawed at me. Was I inventing this elaborate betrayal in my head? Was I letting unfounded jealousy poison my marriage and my relationship with my sister? They were so convincing together, presenting a united front of normalcy and concern for my well-being. But my gut screamed otherwise. It screamed that I was being played profoundly and cruelly. The need for concrete proof became an obsession. The anxiety was a physical presence, a cold knot twisting constantly in my stomach. Something had to break. The dam finally broke spectacularly just 4 days before the baby shower. It wasn't a planned investigation. It was pure gut-wrenching instinct. Mark was supposedly attending a mandatory evening seminar across town. Chloe had texted earlier complaining of Braxton Hicks and saying she was settling in for a quiet night with her feet up. Around 9 p.m., an inexplicable wave of dread washed over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. On impulse, I got in my car. I didn't drive towards his office building. I drove towards a slightly seedy, out-of-the-way bar known more for its dimly lit corners than its craft cocktails. A place neither of them would ever normally go. And there was Mark's dark gray sedan, parked under a flickering street lamp. My blood ran cold. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. I killed my headlights, parked down the block in the shadows, and waited. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I felt dizzy. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Doubt crept in again. Maybe he met a colleague? Maybe he just needed a drink alone? I felt like a fool spying on my own husband. Then the bar door swung open, spilling yellow light and muffled music onto the pavement. Mark stepped out, laughing, throwing his head back. And his arm was wrapped tightly around Chloe's shoulders. My heavily pregnant sister. She was leaning into him, gazing up at his face with an expression of pure adoration, her hand splayed possessively across his chest. The casual intimacy between them was sickeningly blatant. It wasn't friendly support. It was ownership. They stood there for a moment, oblivious, bathed in the grimy glow of the streetlight. He leaned down, tilted her chin up, and kissed her. Deeply. Hungrily. It felt like minutes passed, though it was probably only seconds. The world tilted on its axis. The air left my lungs in a silent whoosh. I tasted bile at the back of my throat. This wasn't a suspicion. This wasn't paranoia. This was the ugly, undeniable truth, playing out like a scene from a nightmare right in front of me. When they finally broke apart, breathless, they exchanged a few more words, another intimate touch, then got into his car. He pulled out, turning not towards Chloe's apartment, not towards our home, but heading west, towards the highway exit known for its cluster of cheap motels. I didn't need to follow. I knew exactly where they were going. I sat there in the darkness, engine off, shaking uncontrollably. The betrayal wasn't just a knife wound. It felt like my entire skeleton had been ripped out, leaving me collapsed and hollow. My husband. My sister. The baby. Oh God, the baby. Tears finally came, hot, angry, silent tears streaming down my face. But beneath the crushing weight of grief, something else began to stir. A flicker, then a spark, then a cold, hard flame of rage. They thought they could destroy me quietly? They thought I would just disappear? The baby shower wasn't just days away. It was destiny. It was the perfect stage. And I knew with chilling certainty exactly what I had to do. The victim narrative was over. It was time to write my own ending. The day of the shower dawned offensively bright and cheerful. My house, meticulously decorated, felt like an elaborate stage set for a tragedy disguised as a celebration. Guests began to arrive, filling the rooms with laughter and chatter, admiring the tiny clothes and the mountain of gifts. Chloe held court in her designated armchair, glowing with a mixture of pregnancy hormones and smug satisfaction, accepting compliments and congratulations. Mark hovered nearby, playing the perfect host, the supportive brother-in-law, occasionally catching my eye with a reassuring smile that now looked utterly reptilian. I smiled back, a mask of serene warmth carefully plastered over the glacial fury churning inside me. Each compliment on the decorations, each expression of excitement for the baby, felt like another twist of the knife. They fueled my resolve. While Mark was charming my aunts and Chloe was unwrapping yet another plush toy, I made my excuses and slipped upstairs. The time had come. No more hesitation. No more doubt. The anonymous message from days ago felt like ancient history. I didn't need it anymore. I had seen the truth with my own eyes. Now I just needed the incontrovertible proof. Sitting on the edge of our bed, the same bed where that sickening selfie had likely been taken, I opened Mark's laptop. My fingers were ice-cold but steady. I bypassed the usual folders, diving into hidden system files, archived message logs, cloud storage accounts he probably thought were invisible. And then I found it. The motherlode. It was worse than I could have possibly imagined. Not just flirtatious texts but graphic descriptions of their encounters. Hundreds of messages spanning months. Secret email chains meticulously planning their rendezvous, disguised as work meetings or solo errands. Saved photos, dozens of them. Them kissing passionately in hotel rooms. Them laughing together in restaurants I'd never been to. Them cuddled up in Mark's car. And the one that made me physically recoil. The selfie, Chloe smirking triumphantly at the camera, Mark asleep beside her in my bed, our bed. Bow rose in my throat. But the ultimate betrayal lay buried in a seemingly innocuous chat thread titled Future Plans. There was, spelled out in black and white, Chloe confirming Mark was the father. Their shared anxiety and excitement about their baby. Their calculated plan for him to leave me after the baby shower, once Chloe was settled into motherhood. They discussed how to manage the fallout, how to spin the narrative. They even dissected my personality, mocking my trusting nature, calling me sweet but so naive. They pitted me. The pain was a physical entity crushing my chest, making it hard to breathe. Silent tears tracked hot paths down my cheeks. But mingling with the agony was something else. A diamond-hard certainty. A chilling focus. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had underestimated me. They thought I was a pawn in their game. They were about to find out I was the one controlling the board. I meticulously copied the most damning messages, emails, and photos onto a small encrypted USB drive I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Then I took a deep, steadying breath, wiped my face, smoothed my dress, and pasted the serene hostess smile back onto my face. It was time to rejoin the party. The final act was about to begin. Showtime. The living room buzzed with forced gaiety. Gifts were piled high. Cake had been consumed. Chloe sat flushed and beaming on her throne, lapping up the adoration. Mark stood beside her, a proud, possessive hand occasionally resting on her swollen belly. My own parents watched them, blissfully unaware, their faces soft with love for their daughters. The hypocrisy was suffocating, but it sharpened the edge of my resolve. After the endless, tedious baby shower games, it was time for the toasts. My mother gave a tearful, heartfelt speech about family and blessings. A couple of Chloe's friends shared generic well wishes. Then all eyes turned to me. I picked up my champagne flute, the cool glass a grounding weight in my hand. I walked to the center of the room, right near the projector screen we'd used earlier for a slideshow of Chloe's childhood photos. "I'd like to propose a toast," I began, my voice ringing clear and steady in the suddenly quiet room. "To Chloe." I raised my glass towards her. She smiled brilliantly, basking in the spotlight. Mark beamed, looking every bit the proud brother-in-law. "We are all so thrilled to be celebrating you today on the cusp of motherhood. It's a miracle." I let the word hang there. And miracles deserve to be built on truth, don't you think? On honesty. On unwavering loyalty. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. Confused frowns appeared. Chloe's smile faltered slightly. Mark's eyes narrowed. Because this baby, I continued, my gaze sweeping from Chloe to Mark, locking onto him, represents a new beginning. And beginnings should be clean. Don't you agree, Mark? I pulled the small USB drive from the pocket of my dress. It glinted under the lights. Honey, be a dear and plug this into the laptop for me. I have a few more memories I'd like to share with everyone. Mark froze. Utter panic flashed across his face, quickly masked by forced confusion. Sarah, what is this? Now really isn't the appropriate time. His voice was tight, strained. Oh, I disagree, I said, my voice dangerously soft, laced with ice. I think it's the perfect time. Unless, I held up my phone, screen lit with a preview of the horrors to come. You'd prefer I simply read a few selected highlights? Perhaps starting with your romantic getaway plans for next month. Checkmate. His face went ashen. Chloe looked wildly between us, dawning horror contorting her features. She started to shake her head, whispering, "No, Sarah, no." But it was too late. Trembling, Mark fumbled with the USB drive, plugging it in with jerky movements. I clicked the remote. The first image filled the screen. Not a baby picture. A screenshot. Mark to Chloe, God, I wish Sarah wasn't coming home tonight. Need you. Usual spot. Audible gasps filled the room. My Aunt Clara dropped her fork. Chloe to Mark. She's so busy planning this stupid shower she has no clue. Bless her naive heart. Almost feel sorry for her. A wave of murmurs swept the crowd. People were turning, staring at Chloe with disbelief. The photo. The one that haunted my nightmares. Mark asleep. Chloe smirking beside him. In our bed. Someone shrieked. My mother made a choked sound, swaying on her feet. My father looked like he'd been physically struck. An email chain. Subject, our future. Explicitly discussing the baby's paternity. Mark, he's ours, Chloe. Forget her. Once this ridiculous shower is over, we start our life. She'll get over it. Chloe let out a guttural sob, covering her face as if she could physically block the images, the words. Mark stood paralyzed, a statue carved from guilt and humiliation, his face shifting from ghastly white to blotchy crimson. The room exploded into chaos. Shouts of disgust, angry accusations, people scrambling away from the disgraced couple as if they were contagious. Family friends looked aghast. My parents stared, utterly shattered, tears streaming down my mother's face. Amidst the pandemonium, I stood perfectly still, watching the inferno I had ignited. I watched their perfect world, built on lies and my own pain, burn to the ground in front of everyone they knew. The raw, naked humiliation radiating from them was almost palpable. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't forgiving. It was brutal. It was necessary. It was my truth finally brought into the light. Taking one last look at the wreckage, at Mark's panicked eyes meeting mine with terrified realization, at Chloe dissolving into hysterical sobs, I lowered the remote, turned my back on the chaos and walked out of the room, out of the house and out of that life. The sound of their world collapsing followed me, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe again. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. For them. The baby shower disintegrated into a maelstrom of recriminations and horrified departures. Family loyalties were tested and, in many cases, broken irrevocably. My parents, devastated beyond words, confronted Chloe and Mark. While their love for their grandchild remained, their relationship with Chloe became strained and riddled with disappointment. Mark's betrayal severed ties completely. I didn't wait for the dust to settle. I stayed with a supportive friend, blocking Mark's desperate, pathetic calls and texts. A nauseating cocktail of flimsy excuses, blame-shifting and tearful apologies that meant nothing. The divorce was swift and uncontested. The evidence I possessed was overwhelming. Mark's reputation was ruined. News travels fast, and the sordid details of his affair with his pregnant sister-in-law, revealed so publicly, made him a pariah both socially and professionally. He lost his prestigious job within weeks. Chloe gave birth to a healthy baby boy. I heard through the grapevine that she and Mark attempted to build a life together, clinging to each other in the wreckage. But apparently, a relationship founded on such profound deceit and public shame doesn't make for a happy home. Their great love story quickly soured under the weight of financial stress, social isolation, and mutual resentment. Last I heard, they were barely scraping by, their dream future reduced to a cramped apartment filled with bitterness. Justice doesn't always look like a lightning bolt. Sometimes it's a slow, grinding erosion of everything you thought you wanted. As for me, walking away was the most painful, liberating act of my life. Healing wasn't instantaneous. The scars from that level of betrayal run deep. Learning to trust again, especially myself, has been a journey. But taking control, refusing to be silenced, and exposing their lies on my own terms, that was profoundly empowering. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my narrative, my dignity, my future. Life now is quieter, simpler, but infinitely more authentic. I've poured energy into my work, rediscovered passions I'd neglected, and cultivated friendships built on genuine respect and honesty. I learned that the deepest wounds can sometimes come from those closest to us, but also that resilience is born in fire. I survived their storm, and I emerged not broken but forged. The shattered pieces are gone. In their place is a strength, a clarity, and a hard-won peace that is entirely, indisputably mine. And that quiet strength feels better than any vengeance ever could.